It's a trap!
What's up, Meta Nerds? This video will be a complete breakdown of the MC80 Home One type Star Cruiser. We'll be mentioning the actual Home One, but also, and this is somewhat confusing, but focusing on the actual line that it inspired. The MC80 Home One type Star Cruiser, produced by Mon Calamari shipyards, was part of the MC80 Star Cruiser line, which has a ton of different other options. Originally built for deep space exploration, each Mon Calamari vessel was unique in design and construction. These ships were later standardized during the conversion to warships through extensive refitting and hull modifications. The standard length for most ships was 1,200 meters, though some individual ships, like the Home One type Star Cruiser, measuring up to 1,400 meters or longer, while the Home One itself was 1,300 meters, putting them around the size of the Venator and smaller than an ISD. Featuring cylindrical hulls with tapered bows, midship hangar bays, and bulbous sterns fitted with 10 large sublight engines, consisting of 4 M8 Star Drive main engines and 6 M4.5 Star Drive maneuvering engines, giving it a megalight rating of 60, which is half an A-wing and 1.5 times the enormous Executor class. The Home One type, known for its heavy cruiser classification, was among the largest capital ships in the Rebel fleet at the time of the Battle of Endor. The ships were built with extensive shielding via the Serage Seal shielding system, and heavy hull armor compared to that of an Imperial-class Star Destroyer. Home One and its sister ships were pivotal as command ships and battleships, leading the Alliance fleet and being true capital ships within the Rebellion. A full Home One type crew consisted of 5,402 personnel, including 78 gunners, with an additional complement of 1,200 troops. The very minimum amount of crew required was 1,230, which applied to both Home One and smaller ships like the Independence. Cargo capacity was substantial at 20,000 tons, and the ship could support up to 2 years' worth of consumables. The hangar capacity varied among ships, with Home One being capable of carrying up to 120 starfighters, including A-Wings, B-Wings, X-Wings, and Y-Wings. And some ships, like the Independence, were equipped with fewer starfighters. Though with the nature of rebellion, the hangar facilities often included shuttles, landing craft, gunboats, assault craft, planetary vehicles, and personal carriers, often of the galaxy's most scruffy nerf herders. It was usually a pretty diverse mix in these hangars. Armament was robust, featuring 29 or up to 36 twin or quad heavy turbolaser batteries, 36 heavy twin ion cannon batteries, 80 quad laser cannon batteries, and 6 heavy tractor beam projectors. Unlike the Executor class, the Home One did not have a dedicated point defense laser system, as its turbolasers were said to be capable of effectively targeting and destroying even small craft, while still being powerful enough to be used for planetary bombardments, though admittedly this was rare. The ships featured advanced sensor and navigation systems, including long-range sensors and a navigation computer. The hyperdrive was powered by the Triluna 400 MGS system, with a primary Class 1 rating and a backup Class 9 system, enabling reliable deep space travel at a speed quicker than just about every Imperial ship out there. The bridge design retained Mon Calamari specific control systems with command stations made for Mon Calamari officers, although there is evidence of one ship that was modified to accommodate a human command crew, and the bridge contained a CS Mark 12 holoprojector table in the center of a briefing room, which was used to monitor the battle in real time. The commanding officer's chair was attached to a swiveling robotic arm overlooking the crew and a panoramic space view. As we talk about in all these ship breakdowns, commanders really like to get their organic eyes on the situation. Multiple command pods were located on both the dorsal and ventral sides of the ship's hull, which ended up being iconic of the Mon Calamari look. Now, the Home One type ships, including their flagship, would not be available to sail to your average citizen, but they did start off serving roles as passenger liners, then later exploration vessels, then battleships, command ships, and carriers. Their significance as premier vessels was established by 20 BBY, which was during the Clone Wars, aligning with the shipyard's continuing reputation for constructing some of the galaxy's most formidable star cruisers, while their rivals, the Quarren, were off making the capital ships for the CIS. Now, most of the stats are the same for the original ship called the Home One that inspired this line, and so it makes sense to look at this cross-section, and though maybe not every single detail is exactly the same in the broader MC80 line, honestly most of what's going on inside is probably very similar across all the different ships. The ship featured 2 sections that could detach from the main body and operate as independent attack or escape vessels if needed, and since the command crew was exclusively Mon Calamari, This drove everything from the ship controls to even having water-filled passages, allowing the crew to move swiftly by swimming through the ship. Over time, these aquatic pathways were removed to make the ship more accessible to other species serving aboard. But despite these changes, the ship retained its distinct Mon Calamari touch. So originally, many of these tubes throughout the ship would allow it to be navigated like a big water park, and like the tube system we see on Mon Cala during the Clone Wars, making it probably the quickest intra-ship transit of any capital ship out there. But moving to the rear, we see the relatively large hyperdrive generator and field emitter, which really end up proving what an engineering marvel the Venator was, as it's one of the only other capital ship-sized craft moving with a Class 1. This leads up to the main reactor and the ion engines themselves. These smaller pods on the outside are other escape craft, but there are also these large bulbous sections, which are shown to be actually craft that can break away. This is an ingenious system that if you have the engineering skills that the fishfolk were known for, you would be confident to pull it off. Instead of having an enormous hangar section, this craft can act like a land invasion force. In peacetime, it was just to move this small cruise ship-sized craft down to places like Coruscant, being packed full of dignitaries and merchants, with the entire underside being full of cargo modules. Why have valuable laser cannons and ordnance sitting inside when it could act like another turbolaser battery or turret? And then of course this and the smaller version up towards the bow each have their own smaller escape pods as well. So the main ship can release dozens of escape craft, while still having a conventional hangar with other craft. Then these whole vessels break away with their own bunch of escape craft on them. It must have been overwhelming for imps trying to shoot it down and decide what to focus on, as there could be a good argument that the VIP was on any of these. There would be a ton of escape craft, so pure odds might save the VIP, but the best shielding was on the main ship. But then maybe that was too obvious and they were on a secondary ship. Maybe a shuttle breaks away, only for an escape pod to travel back to the main ship just in time for a hyperspace jump. It's one of the most interesting and unique features of the Home One that we sadly never see play out in any media. Other things to note are that instead of the forest of antennas on top like most craft, all the sensors and comms are packed into the nose, which shows their confidence in that shielding system, as you're facing a lot of crucial tech right toward the enemy incoming fire. And not all these pods on the outside are for escape, but some are structures that house specific tech like tractor beams, turbolasers, and we can see inside of the upper deflector shield projector array, showing how it generates out from each of these ridges, and there are said to be 3 of these, with the second being on the ventral side closest to the enormous deflector shield generator. These 3 would, in theory, act like regenerative walls of defense. The enemy would take out the outer layer, and while it was pounding away on the second one, the first layer should be fixed and back up. The odds that the enemy would be able to overwhelm all 3 shields and then take out your engines or hyperdrive systems before you could escape was almost impossible. And though I am in general in agreement with Thrawn, being against the imp's tendency to build super weapons, but to give Palps and friends credit, it would be things like the Death Star and Eclipse Superstar Destroyer that definitely would have enough to overwhelm something like the Home One in an instant. Maybe you could think a dozen ISDs could do that as well, but there is something to having a weapon that can pop out of hyperspace and simply overwhelm even the most craftiest of shield designs. Something that can one-shot a supposedly impenetrable target, be that a triple-layered ship or even a planetary-sized shield generator. As for its history, the Home One was originally built as a civilian vessel at the Mon Calamari shipyards, like most Alliance-era Mon Calamari warships. It was designed as an unarmed exploration ship for deep space missions and for making contact with alien species. When the Mon Calamari decided to support the Alliance, Home One was converted into a warship and became Admiral Akbar's flagship after he was freed. The ship gained importance after the Alliance's defeat at the Battle of Hoth, which left them without a planetary base. Home One then served as a mobile base for the rebel leadership and became one of the most crucial assets to the rebellion under Akbar, who was now the supreme commander of the rebel fleet. At the Battle of Endor, Home One was one of the largest ships in the fleet, and Akbar led the Alliance forces from its bridge. The ship continued to play a key role, with Akbar personally commanding it in major missions.
Those fighters were a diversion. We're being boarded. Defend the primary reactor, land on the cruiser, and defend its reactor at once.
Including defending the reactor core from stormtrooper attacks, with help from X2. For the next 5 years, Home One was the base of Rogue Squadron, and took part in battles like the Seizure of Coruscant, the Battle of Bilbringi, and the Battle of Sirtrik. Akbar often led engagements from Home One, so it needed to be kept ready at all times, and repair yards in orbit over Coruscant maintained the ship. Even though newer Mon Calamari ships like the MC80B and MC90 were introduced, and by 10 ABY, Akbar commanded from the MC90 Defiance. Yet even then, Home One was still seeing action. It led a task force against Leona Tavera's Invid pirates in 11 BBY, alongside Rogue Squadron and 2 Victory-class Star Destroyers. Akbar continued to use Home One as his flagship until at least 23 ABY. That's it for the breakdown, and as for behind-the-scenes facts, there are a ton of discrepancies on ship specifics like weapons, something you'd expect since this came out more than 40 years ago. One of my favorite small details is that in the novelization of Return of the Jedi, Home One was referred to as the Headquarters Frigate, with that being in italics like it's its name, while Home One was used more like a call sign, as if there were a bunch of other homes within that unit, like the call signs within Red Squadron, like Red 6. And in Empire at War, it was twice the size of the ISD. If you do want to check out some of the resource guides for yourself, here are the most useful ones. If you made it this far, please hit that like button. It really is the best way to help me out. Subscribe to see more, check out these other videos, I'm sure you'll like them. But most important of all, remember, maybe the Death Star wasn't so much for destroying planets, but for just sticking it to the fish folk. And the Force to be with you. Always.